So welcome to the podcast series, Real Talk. Real Talk is a discussion-based series engaged with real people about real issues that prevail in our world. These real issues are causing believers in Yeshua to stop, reflect, and consider how we are to tackle them as we seek to embrace, love, and even challenge behavioral stances and patterns of people who encounter a real God. They will challenge our own stance as believers in Yeshua as to where we are on the spectrum of love and mercy and justice as we seek to engage the people of our world. So I want to begin by asking you to introduce yourselves. Tell us your name and the town you live in, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Fiona and I live in Nottingham.
Hi everyone, I'm Esther and I live in Blythe.
Hi everyone, my name is Sharon and I live in Nottingham.
Hi, I'm Lily and I live in Hertfordshire.
Hello, I'm Isaac and I live in Blythe.
So welcome panel. Okay, so for our third and final sort of subject this evening, I do want to sort of start with this and end with this and then pick up next week with another subject which we'll tell at the end of the session. But I do want to sort of think about dating and relationships and marriage. And I suppose I start off by saying really, most of us on this panel are of the era of Covenant College or the Congregation of Yahweh's stance with regards to not openly encouraging relationships within the fellowships. And we were of that generation where we've sacrificed for some of our younger ones coming through. But this natural expression, this sort of moving forward and trying to establish a relationship with a partner, a future partner, is something that Alika is probably the youngest member of the group and of the panel. You know, young people, that's what they're doing. That's how they're going forward. They're going out with purpose. They're going out with zeal. They know what they want and they're going to obtain that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's actually a natural progression. Unfortunately, we weren't in that privileged position when we were younger. And so we've left it till quite late in life where we've found partners or we've still searching for partners. We've missed the cutoff for having children. You know, we've made some sacrifices along the way. So I suppose my question to us now as we talk about this and we start this sort of conversation, what should we be saying? What advice should we be offering? And I'm hoping that Lily's going to speak up from a young person's perspective about kind of where this goes from your end, but certainly from us older ones. You know, what should we be saying? What should we be offering? Is dating apps an acceptable means of exploration? Is another question I want to throw out as well as we think about this. What do we think, folks?
Sorry, no. I am not married. I've had some disastrous relationships with Christian men. So personally, I'm not a good example, but with dating apps, I think they are acceptable. I personally only dated Christian men because that's what I wanted to do. That's what I felt was right. Didn't work out for me, but for other people it has. So I'm not against, like, because I know some people have met their husbands or wives on these apps, or in our day the email or the website, especially if there's not many men in the church, and there tends to be more women than men in most churches, I think. So I'm not against apps like that at all. It's up to the individual, obviously, but I'm not against that.
Okay, Sharon, was you going to say something after following on?
Yes, I was going to say that I don't envy our young people growing up in our society today with regards to relationships, because it's a really it's like a minefield with you've got to understand what certain things mean. You've got to it's got to be the toughest journey for those who are believers, who love Yahweh and want to do the right thing, because what is being pumped out there is that, you know, marriage is the last thing on the agenda. You know, everything is kind of back to front. You know, people meet up, they live together, they buy a house, and then they think, oh, maybe we should get married. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So I know for a fact, I remember a young person saying to me once, not so long ago, maybe a few years ago, you know, have you got any kids? So I said, no. And they said, did you not want any children? So I said, yes. I said, but I didn't find, I never got married, I didn't find the right person to get married to. So no, and she said to me very clearly, and she was part of our youth group at the time, you know, she said very clearly to me, she said, you don't have to be married to have children. And I says, that's very true. But I says, because of what I believe, you know, I would, you know, that would be going against Yahweh's laws. So I would want to be married first before I had children. And I just think I mean, even, so we went straight to marriage, but even relationships are really difficult because it's all physical. It's this physical aspects of relationship that gets thrown out at young people, well, at people in general. And very little about, you know, being a great friend, developing, understanding, knowing, you know, getting to know each other really well so that you have a foundation for everything else that comes, you know. So it's so immediate. Relationships are so immediate. And what tends to happen is that young people feel the pressure of having to have sex, even if they don't want to, because that seems to be what has to happen. And it worries me a lot that, you know, people go into sex, marriage and all of that without really knowing the person, because that's the last thing that's actually, you know, promoted out there, you know. It's, you know, go and have a great time and all, you know, and the whole idea of being, you know, that you can just go and have sex with somebody that you don't really know seems to be what's out there in our society. So I do not in any way envy our young people. I think you have to have a good understanding of what it is that you personally want, what it is that Yahweh says about it, and how you're going to negotiate that and live it out. You've got to know that before you even begin to go out there and start to have a relationship, because it's the easiest thing for things to just go more further than you ever wanted it to. So it's about setting your own standards, those standards that link up to what Yahweh says before you go and do. So I don't envy them. I am like Esther, single. Again, had some had some good relationships, some very bad ones. But again, because my focus was that I would want to marry somebody that loved Yahweh as well. So I'm still single today. You know, it's a tough one. It really is, and I think that we should be a lot more open about it in our getting together, in our fellowships, at the pulpit. We need to be, I think it has become something that is in the background, when we know the reality is that that's what faces all our young people all the time. So sorry for going on, but that's where I was coming from. That's, you know.
I was thinking, because I got married at 25 and we were dating maybe a year and a half. And one of the things I found through like peers and their experiences and just observing what actually goes on, I think the first and foremost thing to have in place when looking for a partner, especially as a young person, is to first have your relationship with Yeshua. That's the first place to start, because I think once you have that connection with Yeshua, you can then be in a place to hear from the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit will tell you if somebody is right for you or wrong for you. And I think it's really important to start in a place of prayer. You know, it's tell Yahweh that you're lonely or you want a partner, and yeah, you want a husband or you want a wife, that they're your desires. We're allowed to have desires. You know, man wasn't made to be alone. Look at Adam and Eve. So I think that's a good place to start, is with prayer, honest prayer about how you're feeling, because I think when you have that relationship with Yeshua and you're in that waiting period where you want a partner or a companion, the Holy Spirit will help you to abstain in the right areas and not put yourself in places of temptation. And I'm talking from experience, because Scott and I, we were young, well, young to most people when we got married at 25, and 14 years later, we're still going strong. But I prayed first, and there were other people that I liked, and I said, you know, and there was one person I liked in particular, and I prayed about it, and I said, Father, don't let this person break my heart. And as soon as I said that, it's like the Spirit said, this is not the one for you. I was like, oh, okay then. And I didn't invest any more emotion, because I didn't, well, yeah. So I think it's really important to have that relationship with Yeshua first and foremost, before looking outside to fill that space that maybe Yeshua is trying to fill himself, that we might look for in a partner. I think once we start getting the foundation right, the rest can be built on it. And that would be my key advice to any younger person looking for a relationship. Yeshua first, then that next.
Yeah, I'd really agree with that, Fiona. I had, similar to Esther, string of disastrous relationships before, and it was exactly the same thing, that I had to get to a place where she was like, be confident with me and be confident in yourself and be comfortable with yourself. And that journey of knowing who you are as a person, I feel like you have to make that decision so much younger and younger. And even like me, looking back at people younger than me now, the decisions you have to make and the pressures you face as you're growing up through teenage years and early 20s and whatever, it's insane to have to make these things that will change your life. I just felt so ill-equipped to handle all those decisions. So I was definitely in exactly the same place of Yahweh saying, yeah, stop. When the time is right, the time will be right. When the time is not right, it's not your season. And that's really just what I held on to.
I think that's actually such a mature place to be, because not everybody can. I mean, Fiona's spoken with words of wisdom, I think, but it's not everybody that has that capacity to be as mature and as level-headed, because the pressure that is brought to bear outside of church and also in church is massive. So you're in church, you've been raised in church, you know, that's kind of where things are. So when you get to sort of 18, 19, 20, you're in church and you're looking around church and there isn't anybody. So what do you think you do? You then think, okay, I need to take myself out of this situation to go find something and find someone that's going to actually meet my needs. And so I think there is that level of sometimes desperation, or I might get left on the shelf and there isn't anybody here, so what am I waiting for? And it's almost like you must take matters into your own hands. So waiting is not always easy, but there is a level of pressure. You see, the other interesting thing is that this was in the heart of Yahweh from day dot. It was always his plan for man and woman to be together, for families, for creating families, and and for people to find a partner, suitable partner. It was always in his plan. But I asked myself, why is it so difficult then? If that was his plan, why is it so difficult then to find and be a part of what Yahweh, if you've given your entire life to him and served him and, you know, Yahweh, I've laid down everything. This is my heart's desire. Can I ask the panel to say, well, what if Yahweh says no? How do we feel about that? The very, because if family and is in the heart of Yahweh, that's what he designed and desires. Why is it then that some of us want to have families that can't have families? We can't even find a partner, you know, when we're not just, you know, when you're getting older, it's not just about the sexual relationship either. It's just about the companionship. It's about the friendship. There's more to it. You see, when you're young and you know, it's all about having sex because that's what everybody has. Everybody has sex, so let's have sex. But that's not the only thing that matters. Although that seems to be so high on the world's agenda, and I think sometimes that infiltrates into the minds and hearts of people who are in Yeshua, so that they sometimes lose focus. You know, it's the desires, it's the lust, it's maybe the watching the pornography, it's the things that aren't actually very helpful for us, especially if we don't have partners. So if that is Yahweh's desire, what can we do? I mean, Esther suggested that dating apps is okay. Is that what other people feel?
I don't see there's a problem, you know, with that. But going back to something that Sharon said earlier, you know, about the enormity of the pressure that is on young people, and I think sometimes we grossly underestimate that pressure, because, and I see it with young people that they judge compatibility by the physical relationship and how that makes them feel, and that's how they determine who's going to be their life partner, by that compatibility in that physical relationship. And we know that's just a very small part of it. And you know, here's my thing. I suppose it's a bit of a rhetorical question, and that is, for those of us who have had a string of disastrous relationships, as Lalika and Esther have just shared, sometimes we can come to the conclusion that maybe Yahweh doesn't want me to have a partner. You know, sometimes we can come to that conclusion wrongly because we've had a string of disastrous relationships. You know, I don't think that's the case, because Yahweh calls certain people to be celibate and others not to be, and you know, that's what we need to determine. And another thing, if I may, and this is a massive topic, and I'm not saying Christian or non-Christian is the answer, but there's the scripture that talks about being unequally yoked, and the reason why, you know, that's such a refined scripture in terms of relationships is because when you are unequally yoked, you can't what's the word? You can't perform the task as a couple, the task that you have ahead of you. So if you're unequally yoked in the beginning, you're not going to be able to perform the task of marriage, you know. And so there's so many pressures, you know, for our young people to, you know, to consider, because we have the world's pressures and then we have the church pressure, you know, as well. So it's very, very difficult, extremely.
I hear that, Isaac, and I hear what everybody has been saying, but kind of take it back to the top where Dasley started speaking, and she spoke of the sacrifices that a lot of us have made, and we have. But that was a choice that we chose. it wasn't anything that was promoted in our group. I mean, was it Fiona or somebody or the other, when somebody was speaking, can't remember, somebody's talking about sex or whatever, and I'm thinking, when I was growing up, if that kind of crossed your mind because of what you were being told and the way that you were being led in Yahweh's will, you felt like you'd committed the cardinal sin, even to allow your mind to think like that. And so therefore we held fast to that which we were taught. We held fast to that which we felt and believed at the time was Yahweh's will for us. Young men came in the church and other women got them, or whatever the case might be. And like Isaac was saying about you feeling you're probably not good enough, hey, all sorts go through your mind because you never know. But even though all of this was going on, at the back of your mind, all you wanted to do was to serve Yahweh. So therefore there was no deviation from what you were being taught, and you stayed in that way until you're the age that you are now, and you're still in that way with no man and no woman. We need to show our young people both sides of the coin. We need to let them know. I mean, Isaac was talking about being unequally yoked. That's a completely different topic, because I'd love to go into that one, because being there's so many people in church that are married and they're so unequally yoked. Don't get me fired up here. So because somebody's not from your church, or because somebody might in your belief and estimation is not a Christian, is not, he or she is probably a better match for you than somebody that is in the church or is in your own fellowship. And these are things that we need to explore and talk about with our young people. Don't have them in a little pigeonhole like we were in, and I don't mind it. The pigeonhole has kept me, and I give Yahweh thanks for it. But I'm just saying, what we sacrificed, what we went through, we know what it feels like, and it is our duty and our responsibility to help the young ones like Lalika and the others that are coming behind Lalika to look at things otherwise, not to feel guilty about wanting to get married or wanting to have children, wanting to have a family. Yahweh created us to do this. You're not committing, it's not a cardinal sin to think about it. Let's be open-minded and have that honest conversation.
Yes.
We appreciate that, the
Yes.
truth of what you're saying, Rose, absolutely, and that's perfectly fine. Sharon, go ahead.
I really want to help our young people, but there isn't a but. I really want us to be more upfront. Look, I've done the journey, the similar one to Esther, to Rose, to Dastley. You know, do I have any regrets? I think I do, if I'm being very honest. But that's okay. Yahweh's got me. So if we don't put it on the table, they are going to have those feelings. They are going to be wanting marriage. They are going to be wanting relationships. Yes, they are. But if we never talk about it and they feel guilty for things that they're feeling or thinking, that the enemy can use that against them. So I would like to see this more on the table, and with no judgment, non-judgmental, sit and let's talk this out. This is not about pointing finger, and just say, it's okay, guys. We've all been there. We've all had these feelings. Some of us have got married, some of us haven't for whatever reason. But these are some of the things that you need to think about as you going through, as you start to go through this journey. So these are some of the things that you, it might be great for you to know for yourself what it is that you want. I mean, really, somebody said it already. Ideally, you really need to know who you are, because unless you know who you are, you don't know who is going to fit you. And so I just want us to have those conversations. We have to find a way to have those conversations with our young people. And I'm guessing, to be fair, that they will feel embarrassed and all of that, that they won't actually want to speak out. When do you start talking to them again as well? I'm talking about our young people in our church. A little while back, Shirley and I did a course in the north, in Blythe, with the young people there, called The Journey of Dating. And I just feel that that's something that needs to be happening throughout. And what was great, you know, I loved it because it was in Blythe, because, you know, they like to call call a spade and whatever. They're very upfront and straight on it, and they'll just tell you. And I love that. And that's what we want. We want them to be able to speak like that, because I think there's such a lot they could gain and learn that's going to make their journey a little bit easier if we could have those conversations. So yeah, because it's so hard. I said it right at the beginning, it's the toughest journey that they're going to have right now, and we've got to help them make it.
I agree, Sharon. I think if we don't have these conversations, we're not opening the platform to answer questions or give guidance, and people are just going to do things anyway because the world will take over, because we're not counteracting those influences or the world's perspective on sex or marriage. And I think we make it taboo. And I don't see why. We need to be open and like you say, non-judgmental, and teach young people, these are the mistakes I made, these are the things I wish I should have done, these are the scriptures you can look at, these are the activities you can do. Do you know what I mean? If you want to do this with somebody, get a chaperone, or whatever the equivalent is. And I just think the more we're hush about it and try and sweep it under the carpet, the worse it is for the young people coming up, because they're just going to make all the wrong decisions. I've seen it as when I was growing up in church in my late teens and 20s. You know, I'm not saying I did this, I'm just saying that, you know, you could go to church on a Sabbath, and like you hit on a Sunday, you hear about this one's done this and that one's doing that, and this one's sending this kind of text and that, and it's all done because it's not spoken about, it's not transparent, and it becomes a shameful, dirty secret then, because people can't talk about those feelings or desires or talk about lust and have these open and frank conversations. I don't know why we make it taboo. We talk about all sorts of things, but we don't talk about sex before marriage or relationships. And like, why should we be afraid to talk about something that is so natural? Is it because it makes certain people feel uncomfortable? It shouldn't. We should just be, we are a family, you know. Children go to aunts and uncles and grandparents for advice and their experience. And I think we need to do that across many different subjects.
Thank you, Fiona. This is definitely the start of that conversation, and that's one of the reasons why this is a conversation that's being had now. It's, you know, we are pioneering some views that maybe some people don't really want to hear about, but that's part of this conversation. That's part of getting a wide audience of people who have different views about certain subjects and bringing them to the forefront, because this is really, really, really important. Let's just move from the church for a moment. Definitely agree 100% that this is a conversation that we need more open dialogue with young people, etc. I mean, just sort of move away from the church, sorry, slightly, in the sense that so we're seeking to find a partner, and I think generally speaking, we're moving with the times, we're using the technology, so dating apps are an acceptable means of doing that. But what would we say if our couples moved in together? I mean, they could clearly tell us that they're not sleeping together, but they've moved in together because actually they need to buy a house together because they will get married. Sharon started off by saying everything's a little bit back to front. We get to know each other, we have sex, then we think about living together, then we think about getting married, or maybe a baby comes first and then we get married, you know, because that's the trend of the world, isn't it? I'm not saying that we are of the world, but we do need to give guidance. We need to be able to show people the way that is right. So who is saying, and what are we saying as to whether moving in together with somebody is okay or not okay? I'm throwing this out because I think it's important to have these conversations.
I think it's very, very risky, because in us all is good and bad, and when you're put into a certain kind of environment where emotions are moving, and it's very difficult to exercise self-control, and I think for couples to move in together without being married, it's very risky, in my opinion.
Let me just throw in a question for you. That's another controversial question. People of the world will say, I don't know actually if I'm compatible with this person because we haven't had sex with each other. So how do we know that we're sexually compatible? Because that makes for good marriage. What do we say to that?
Well, sex before marriage is a no-no. Because the problem with sex is that you become one. So both units become one, and if you're not compatible, there is still that link because you've had intercourse. So you're creating, and I'm not saying someone does this, but if someone has sex in order to determine whether they're sexually compatible, and they find out they're not, are they going to have a string of failed compatibilities, down the line, and that's going to create a whole set of new issues, for that individual.
So just to say, I'm not being funny, but that's the way of the world.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You're dating somebody. Who knows how long that has to be before the sex is the first thing that needs to be thought about, and whether that's something we want to do together. Because there's massive amount of pressure with regards to that. And you are absolutely right. You have sex with this person and that person and that person. And if you are one with that person, how are you fragmenting your life? One with this person, one with that person, before you know it, you're fragmented all over the place. And you wonder why emotionally you are so broken and mashed up, because actually that's not the way Yahweh designed us to be. But that is the way of the world. And if we're not careful, if we don't teach our young people, then that could be something that they see as a pattern to follow, because there is no alternative. You are absolutely right. Sex before marriage, whether that's with a man or whether that's with a woman, or whether that's whether you are married, if you're not married, they are not right before Yahweh. It's as clear as that. We can't choose to deny that or make excuses for that. And I dare to say that happens more frequently in church than I don't even want to think about. But is that because we're not open like we are being today and talking about these things? Is that because it's done behind closed doors? I asked the question about living together, but you don't have to live together to have sex, do you? You go to a hotel or back of a car or whatever, because that's what but that's what people do. You're laughing, but in reality that's the truth of the way of the world. But if you can't, here's the thing. So let's just give an illustration. I'm a young woman, and my desires for sex are great. I'm not saying this, I'm not a young woman, I'm old, but but I have this insatiable desire. I can't share that with anybody. But I feel I need to go and find somebody and be in a relationship with that person. But I have no control over myself. So self-control, which is the fruit of the Spirit, just not there. Well, who am I talking to? How am I getting the help? How am I getting support in that? Because these are real things that captivate our young people, that take a hold of them, and they could end up making very bad decisions if we're not taught the right things. Because as we clearly said, if you are not married and you have sex with somebody, it's wrong. Have we said that? Or is it just assumed? We have said that.
Oh, yes, I do believe so.
Okay.
I remember it.
Okay.
I've definitely had that growing up in church.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, good. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
clear statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Go
But
on, Sharon.
I think we're dealing with a situation often, young people who are grown up in the church is completely different to a young person that comes in from a family that are not church in any way. And so their brain is wired this way. What they've seen, they might even be coming from a family of parents who are not even married. So the brain's already wired a certain way, right? So the problem will, the issues we'll have there, unless we talk about it as clear as, they are not going, this that's been already wired is gonna, it's not gonna be, they're not gonna think it's a problem. They're not gonna think I shouldn't do this or I shouldn't do that. They will do it because that's what they've seen as being normal. So that's where we will fall down if we are not being as clear as that. You know, Yahweh intends for sex to be within a marriage situation where you are married and you're doing life together and you're moving forward. Yahweh expects us to be within a marriage between a man and a woman in order to have sex. That's what's laid out in his word. And if I am a disciple, then I am going to live by that. If we're not saying that as clearly out there, they will not know it.
I think, Sharon, as well, you're right, people who are not church or not raised in church, their parents, they're living with parents that aren't married, and yet the world says they are married. It's a common law marriage. You know, the two are together. My mum and dad, they're married, but they haven't got the certificate. They just live together, you know, and that's also difficult for somebody who's coming into church to understand clearly that that's not how it's meant to be, because that's all they've ever known. They were raised in that situation. Fiona.
Can you see me going?
Yes.
Because that was the other point I was going to bring up, is if the state recognizes common law husband and wife, and in the Bible, before there was a ceremony to mark that somebody is becoming somebody's husband or wife, somebody would just claim someone as their husband or wife. So what institutes a marriage relationship? Is it the moving in? Is it the long term of knowing each other? Is it living under the same roof? Is it having a ring on your finger? Is it declaring it publicly that you're committed to this person for the rest of your life and therefore do that? Because you could argue and say, well, we've been together 7 years, we're childhood sweethearts, we're moving in together, I don't want to be with anybody else. What's wrong with that? I'm committed. Why do I need a piece of paper? When everybody knows I'm with this person and the state recognizes it, and we're, as believers, we're to follow the law of the land. So where do we chalk the line? Throwing that out there.
Let me just read you something that I got here in a second. So scripture is clear about marriage being a holy and divinely established covenant. It is equally clear about our obligations to honour and obey the law of earthly governments, which are also divinely established authorities. That's Romans chapter 13, verse 1 and 2. Basically, if two people are living together, little Johnny comes to our church and comes to Sunday school and we're telling him this, that and the other, you say that my mummy and daddy are married. You know, they've had sex and had children, and that's it. We're common law marriage, and that's it, because that's what the law says. But in Yahweh's eyes, not so. And I think it's difficult, isn't it, when we've got broken relationships, when we've got broken people, to speak clearly, but also with love and understanding and compassion, so that people understand where we're coming from. Because I do think that when we're talking about people coming into our fellowships, coming into our spaces, they come with all these sort of difficult situations, and how clear are we going to be? What are we going to say? It's knowing what to say in those situations. It's knowing how to be and how to handle people that are in difficult situations. And next week, we're going to be looking hopefully at gay marriages, and really how we see that and what that means, and how we are going to perceive those people, how are we going to receive those people, and how are we going to be merciful and kind. And yet, you know, whenever Yeshua spoke to any of the people who had done wrong, he gave them one commission: go and sin no more. Stop doing what you're doing, and change your ways. And so it's knowing what we're going to say to those kinds of people. As clear as that, are we going to speak? Are we going to say something? These are difficult subjects, but anyway, I'm going to close this up by sort of suggesting that really we've started down a path of exploration. We want to encourage our young people. We want to speak out. We want to tell the truth. We want to say that Yahweh is a loving God, a God of covenant, a God who wants to see a man and a woman together producing children, a family man he is, but ultimately is a God of covenant, and that matters to him massively. And really how we come to that is important. So it's the steps before all of that that we need to just really establish with our young people and encourage them. I want to thank you for starting this ball rolling, and for just sharing with us. It's been an absolute joy.